Welcome to the Rainy Day Rabbit Holes podcast, your escape from the mundane.
Dive into the rich history of the Pacific Northwest with us and let your mind wander down the rabbit hole.
Because in the Northwest, it's always raining something weird. I am Shay.
And I'm Jody. Let's fall down the rabbit hole.
Jody, I've got a little present for you.
I'm so excited.
You see that box on your table?
Yes.
Go ahead and open it.
Okay, opening.
Please describe what you found inside.
Plastic bread tabs.
That's not just a bread tab.
Oh?
That's an aquapanid.
Aquapanid.
And that innocent and boring piece of plastic that you hold in your fingers isn't just a nifty way to confuse my husband, who apparently doesn't know how to use one to keep a bag closed.
I always throw them out and just twist it.
You twist it and then tuck it under?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes my husband doesn't even bother with the twist and tuck under.
Oh, no, that would be a problem.
Yeah. That little bread tab is a connection between Yakima, Washington, Philippine dictator Ferdinand Marcos, trillions of dollars worth of looted wartime gold, the rise of political extremism in the United States, and junior mints.
Junior mints?
Yeah, you heard me right. Junior
I love
mints.
junior mints.
And sugar babies. And bread tabs.
And bread tabs. All together. Okay.
All connected.
What do they all have in common?
Well, let's get into it.
All right.
Our story starts with Floyd Paxton, a California engineer who got his start producing nails and nail machines during World War II. His company supplied the Washington State apple industry for packaging materials. You remember they used to package apples in wooden crates.
So the nails were for the crates.
Right.
Okay, got it.
And he also produced the machines that would make the nails.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. When his apple distributors moved from boxes to bagging, they were frustrated with the wire and paper tape twist ties. We all know about those, which often broke, and they were irritating to use. They required a lot of dexterity. And so on one boring flight in 1952, Floyd was snacking on some peanuts, but wanted to keep the rest for later, but there was no way to close the bag. He pulled out an expired credit card out of his wallet and his trusty penknife, because remember, at this time you could just walk onto an airplane with a bomb.
Yes. I mean, it had to be carry-on size or smaller, but
exactly. Yeah. And then, but he was probably smoking at the same time, right?
Yes.
And there were doilies on the back of the, remember the doilies?
Oh, yes.
On the back of the headrest. So he pulls out his trusty penknife and he whittled what would become the world's first bread tab. This humble invention revolutionized the exciting world of polyethylene packaging.
Wow.
It was more hardy than a twist tie. It required less manual dexterity. He set up shop in California in 1954 to manufacture the newly minted Kwik Lok, that's Kwik Lok, closures, and eventually moved to Yakima, Washington, and built a plant there, which is a small farming community about 2.5 hours southeast of Seattle.
Some of my favorite wines are from there.
Absolutely. There's great wine out there. That's where a lot of the produce and other agricultural products are grown out in eastern Washington and Yakima.
It's the Palm Springs of Washington.
Exactly. Definitely warmer than where we live.
That's what the sign says when you come
really?
down.
I don't know if I've actually ever been to Yakima. Maybe driven through it. I mean, is there much to see?
Well, I've spent most of my time out there for two reasons: soccer tournaments and wine tours.
Yeah, I'm there for the wine.
I mean, if that's your purpose, there's plenty to do.
Soccer and wine.
And then there's a restaurant out there you have to go to.
There's one restaurant out there.
Well, it's called Miners, and it's down your alley of the In-N-Out burger type style food.
Miners as in children or as in people who used to work in mines?
People who used to work in mines.
Okay. It would be funny if it was just called Miners.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't.
Where you could pick up children.
I didn't find anything specifically amazing about it, but I also don't find anything super amazing about In-N-Out Burger. So it's lost on me. Like, this is a thin patty and a $1 bun.
It's the sauce and the onions. Double animal style. That's how you got to get it.
Yeah.
Kwik Lok's company headquarters are still located in Yakima today.
Wow.
To this day, Kwik Lok manufactures almost all of the bread tabs used in the world, with plants in Japan,
Canada,
Australia, and Ireland. Are we bored yet?
No. I'm looking at my, I want to see if there's any labeling on here.
Yeah. Like, what are the numbers about? Why are they different shapes? Why are they different sizes?
Yes.
Why are the teeth different?
I've always wondered. So I am so excited.
Well, none of those questions will get answered today.
What?
But
that was a setup.
But I want you guys to hang on because it's going to get a whole lot weirder. But first, you know what's even more exciting than bread tabs?
No.
These ads.
Love it.
Welcome back. Hey, if you want to listen to these episodes ad-free, you got to join our Patreon. Not only do you get ad-free episodes, but you get bonus episodes and more perks. Head to our website, rainydayrabbitholes.com to sign up. And also, you become smarter and more attractive and have our undying love and loyalty.
Yes, it's quite the package deal.
And you can also sign up to the wait list to marry Jody later on when Keith is no longer around.
Hey!
Promising so many things.
You're selling me. First,
I am.
In the last episode, you wanted pictures.
Hey!
Sold pictures of my boobs.
You at one point were willing to sell sexual favors from me for ratings and reviews.
I'm still in.
All right. Well, before the break, I promised to get into the weird. Hold on to your pants.
I'm actually doing that. I don't know why.
You're so excited. You got to hang on because here we go. Floyd wasn't just a boring engineer and inventor. Oh no, he was so much more. Turns out, Floyd was a McCarthy-loving anti-communist wingnut. He became one of the founding members of the John Birch Society in 1958. The main founder, well, this is where the story even connects to those favorite movie theater candies like Junior Mints and Sugar Babies. The man was Robert W. Welch Jr., who started out the candy company, later lost it. His brother took over, so he went to work for his brother's company. It's convoluted. It doesn't matter. That's the James O. Welch Candy Company, but they're the ones who make Junior Mints, Sugar Babies, and other candies that still exist today. He was an insufferable adherent of multiple conspiracy theories. He believed that the American people consisted of 4 groups: communists, communist dupes or sympathizers, the uninformed who have yet to be awakened to the communist danger, and the ignorant. That's it.
Holy schmoly. I feel like this guy could be plopped right down in our times now and fit right in.
Right?
Wow, some things don't change. This is amazing.
He was a prominent contributor to Joseph McCarthy's re-election campaign. The John Birch Society was made up of Welch's rich, white cronies who would gather monthly to watch films that Welch would make about the dangers of communism, postcard writing campaigns to government officials linking specific policies to the communist menace. So they're insufferable. They would hold fancy dinners at the Waldorf Astoria in New York with powerful politicians. They had books, bookstores, radio shows, even summer camps for members' children. They also loved conspiracy theories. They sound like fun.
Right. They sound like they're still around. You're just describing people that are still here. This is crazy.
Yes, this is where the tie into the rise of extreme right-wing politics comes from.
We haven't learned how to manage
simmer settle.
Yeah, like catch it early because we're out of control.
Well, let's touch briefly on the John Birch Society, which I'm going to just abbreviate to JBS. The JBS is often attributed as shaping the current ultra-conservative alt-right faction that we are faced with today, with nuts like Marjorie Taylor Greene spewing weird conspiracy theories and now Christian nationalism.
Beach blonde, butch body. Bad build. Beach blonde, butch body.
So besides Marjorie Taylor Greene, major wingnut Taylor Greene, and Donald Trump going on and on about the deep state, which was a big thing with the John Birch Society, was the deep state.
That makes sense.
Still is, yeah.
We want to go back to that era, so why not pull up their old tricks?
And it has links even to the online cult QAnon. They were obsessed with communists. They thought that secret communist plots were behind everything and that communists were scheming to take over the country. Welch claimed that President Dwight D. Eisenhower was a, quote, dedicated, conscious agent of the communist conspiracy. He believed that the American government was colluding with the Soviets to form a one-world government. They wanted to ban sex education in schools, tried to insert so-called patriotic, anti-communist texts into libraries and classrooms. They opposed desegregation and the civil rights movement. They were deeply opposed to labor unions and wanted a free market that was unencumbered by government regulations. Any attempt at regulation was a communist plot to transform the U.S. into something resembling the Soviet Union.
So what you're telling me is not one person in that faction of our current government has a single original freaking thought.
Right.
This has been done before.
Well, they opposed the U.S. being part of the United Nations.
Yeah.
They wanted to impose Christian morality on the culture at large. Is this ringing a bell?
Oh my God, I had no idea. We are literally repeating.
And the John Birch Society still exists today.
So gross.
With the same.
So gross.
Robert Welch had some pretty nifty conspiracy theories that he and the Birchers managed to spread.
Birchers.
So, yes, that's what we call the Birchers. We're gonna go over a couple of them. These are fun. He believed that fluoridated toothpaste and fluoridated water were a communist plot to achieve mind control, or at best, a plot to destroy American liberties.
Yeah, strong, healthy teeth will do that.
Yes. Now, I mean, I guess over fluoridation can have adverse health effects, but
absolutely. Too much of anything, really.
Right. He alleged that a radium tube had been placed inside of the stuffing of the Senate seat of Senator Robert Taft, which is what caused the cancer that eventually killed him. Mm-hmm.
So Marjorie got reincarnated.
She's just a Bircher. I wouldn't be surprised if she belonged to them and it just wasn't.
Wow.
Yeah. He spread the conspiracy that Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement was a communist plot directed by the Kremlin. And of course, they hated Brown versus the Board of Education.
That is just fascinating.
Yep. And
I knew these people weren't
the 1950s
smart,
and 60s. Yeah.
I've confirmed this. They're just copying history.
Right. So the JBS is still alive and well today. And of course, major supporters of Donald's, they still embrace isolationist, religious, and right-wing goals, pull out of NAFTA, return America to its, quote, Christian foundations, defund the UN, abolish the Departments of Education and Energy, slash the federal government drastically, stop the investigation of Russia's meddling in the 2016 election. I think you get the point.
I get the point.
So I don't think we'll get any deeper into the John Birch Society because that could be an entire series of this podcast.
Right.
But I do want to drop a recent quote by a Bircher. Don't be surprised if we learn soon that the fluoride in Chinese toothpaste is nuclear waste from North Korea. Absolutely.
Wow, very detailed. Very specific.
Very specific. So the John Birch Society had deep ties to Washington State and were very active in Yakima County, where Kwik Lok was headquartered. Mm-hmm. In 1959, 10 months after their founding, they held a conference at the beautiful Olympic Hotel in Seattle, Washington, where they enlisted some of its first and most powerful members, including Yakima's Floyd Paxton, who contributed substantial financial support to the organization because he had all this like crazy bread tab money now. Bread tab millions, baby.
So he spent it wisely.
Mm-hmm. After all, as one man commented who knew Paxton well, he was a Yakima industrialist who sees a communist behind every sagebrush and conspiracy in the eyes of virtually everyone inside government and out. So everybody.
Wow. That must be a nice life to live.
We're just everybody's part of a scheme.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Dumb.
JBS needed to raise money in order to carry out their many campaigns against communism. One bonkers scheme they got involved in was investing in and promoting a drug called Laetrile. I may be saying that wrong. It's Laetrile. I don't know if you've ever heard of this one.
Mm-mm.
It was purported to be a cure for cancer. And it was synthesized from the pits of apricots.
Oh.
It's a component that is inside of a lot of stone fruits, raw almonds, bitter almond, that sort of thing. We'll get into it. They had several powerful backers and spent tons of money on lobbying and pushing through legislation to get United States approval for the drug. But not only did it not work to cure cancer, it could give you cyanide poisoning. See, it's a partially synthetic form of
Amigadlin.
What she said. A plant substance commonly found in the pits of apricots and some other fruits and nuts. It has been used as an anti-cancer agent since the 1800s, but when the body processes it, it converts to cyanide. In some cases, cyanide can be actually converted into thiocyanate, identified as a possible cancer-causing substance. So not only does it not cure cancer and maybe give you cyanide poisoning, but then maybe also it can cause cancer.
Probably a different one, though.
Right, exactly. So maybe you had like lung cancer and then now you have, like prostate cancer or something like that. In one horrifying case, it caused one woman to develop a large hole in her chest that even plastic surgeons had trouble fixing. Not quite sure how that happened, but wow.
Right. I was thinking eroding from the outside or the inside.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I read a couple of papers by doctors that just labeled it quack medicine.
Oh, yeah.
But interest and hype was so substantial in the 1970s that 27 states actually legalized its use. But the FDA wasn't convinced that the drug worked, and doctors started to speak out against the drug. So since it wasn't federally legal, it was illegal to ship it across state lines. But people were still mortgaging their homes to seek treatment in Mexican clinics. So it was manufactured in Mexico, and then it would be brought into the United States, sometimes legally, but mostly illegally. John Birchers were, of course, pissed that it was being besmirched. According to the American Opinion, the right-wing rag that they published, trial therapists fear that the conspiratorial plan may now be for the U.S. government, the United Nations, and communist Russia suddenly to discover a new control for cancer, which would be Latrell under another name, so that the conspirators would get the credit. It would increase the difficulty of fighting the communists if they are credited with defeating cancer.
This is actually like triggering for me. This is very reminiscent of COVID and no, like don't worry about it. I'm good. I'm just saying like I feel what I felt as people turned on us and wouldn't not value what we were saying. And so this is just like it is so far from beginning to now. Shocking to me. We're just repeating things, but it's making me feel better because we've already been through this and we survived and we got we were fine and we just got to get through it again.
Go through waves of
we're gonna conquer this too.
Yep.
Because when we fight, we win, and we're not going back. You can delete that if you want.
Nope, keeping it. Well, the John Birchers should be pissed. They were involved in smuggling the drug from Mexico into the United States. So they were making lots of money. So of course they're going to be pissed when people are saying that Latrell or whatever the fuck this thing is, however it's pronounced. Several of the smugglers who were indicted for illegal smuggling of the drug were hardcore Birchers. And there is some evidence that Floyd Paxton, our bread tab buddy, that his private plane was used to smuggle the drug. So that's the link to him there.
Yeah.
It took years and many deaths before the FDA finally banned the drug in 1979. But people still would fly to Mexico to try to get treatment for this.
Wow.
I mean, when you're desperate.
Right. And there probably wasn't a whole lot of treatments available.
Right. And I was reading some articles that were just truly heartbreaking about it being given to children and children dying from it. But then people also, when states would try to block it being given to children, people were all up in arms like, are you saying you don't want children to be treated for cancer? No, we want them to be treated for cancer with proven methods.
Grief.
Floyd Paxton was happy to lend his bread tab fortune to help the cause of the John Birch Society. He was on the board of directors. He founded a right-wing newspaper. He ran for Congress and lost 4 times. While trying to set up an ultra right-wing political system in the United States. Like he wanted another party it was like the Tea Party of the 60s.
He didn't have the right cult of personality to put in front is what happened.
He had some weird connections, which I had to stop myself from diving into this too much because it's really not the whole story. The King of Kuwait invested $1 million into his business.
Oh, what? Wait. Okay.
After the former president of Chile was ousted, Floyd and his wife were invited to be guests of the Chilean government for some reason.
While they didn't have a president, or that just happened to be the timing?
I think it was by the new president.
By the new president.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
He also spent a lot of time trying to avoid paying taxes like rich people do by setting up elaborate family trusts. After his death, his estate was finally fined around $14 million in unpaid estate taxes. How does bread tab kingpin Floyd Paxton connect to looted wartime gold, as promised at the top of this episode? Well, we will dive into that, but first, let's check out these solid gold goods and services from our sponsors.
All right.
If you're a fan of tabletop role-playing games, especially those steeped in mystery and folklore, you're in for a treat. The Spirits and Monsters of Old Seattle podcast is an actual play series that brings the Vassin RPG to life, set against the moody backdrop of 1888 Seattle. Join Game Master Brian Kershaw and his team of supernatural investigators as they navigate the eerie world of Scandinavian folklore in the Pacific Northwest. Prepare to be immersed in a blend of storytelling, strategy, and atmospheric horror. Let's roll the dice and dive into the trailer.
The year is 1888, and we find ourselves in the far-flung corner of the United States, called the Pacific Northwest, in the two small towns of Seattle and Ballard. Under rainy gray skies and among the giant old-growth pine forests, there are secrets hiding, invisible to most people, except for those with the second sight. Join us for a new actual play podcast called Spirits and Monsters of Old Seattle. My name is Brian Kershaw, and I'll be your host and game master for this trip into a supernatural Seattle, where my friends and I will be playing a role-playing game called Vassin. Our show is a mixture of comedy and horror, and we would love for you to join us. You can find episodes at spiritsandmonsters.com, or follow and subscribe for new episodes every other Wednesday on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. We can't wait for you to join us.
Welcome back. And hey, if you want to listen to this episode ad-free, consider joining our Patreon, where you will get ad-free episodes, bonus content, self-esteem boosts, better hair, whiter teeth, and more. Just head on over to our website at rainydayrabbitholes.com to sign up. Now, in the course of researching this episode, I learned some things that really bummed me out. As some of you know, I was homeschooled for several years and therefore missed out on a big chunk of world history. If it didn't have to do with Martin Luther and the Christian church, I didn't learn about it. Also, my math skills were terrible.
And that could just, that happens to a lot of people. It doesn't matter if you're homeschooled.
I know next to nothing about most of the wars of the last 100 years, except for what I have learned on my own. Y'all know I'm a big fan of Japan. I mean, I've been there twice. Did you know that?
Oh, when? What?
Did I not tell you about going to Japan?
I had no idea.
And I was really bummed out to learn about the horrific atrocities that the Japanese government, military, and powerful corporations committed for decades. Mm-hmm. It's really nasty. No wonder the Chinese and the Koreans hate the Japanese. They kind of earned it. In the course of trying to take over Southeast Asia, they murdered, tortured, raped, enslaved, pillaged, and plundered. Isn't mankind great? Jeez, why? Okay.
And this is all after religion was already started.
Right.
I thought that's what gave us morals.
Oh, yeah. What would you do without religion? You wouldn't have any morals. Okay. During their rampage through the countries of Asia, they were collecting treasure. They looted banks, churches, museums, tombs, and private homes of their gold, cash, gems, jewelry, artwork, antiques, basically anything of value. The Emperor of Japan, Hirohito, can you tell my joy in being able to say some Japanese words?
You got that one down.
Hirohito. In
Eyes light up.
I know. In collaboration with high-level Yakuza gangsters. Sorry.
Is there an English American English accent when you say that? I wouldn't know
I don't know.
because it doesn't sound like it.
They set up a secret organization called Kinyo Yori, or Golden Lily, to organize the hiding of this gold, appointing his brother, Prince Chichibu, which that's one I hadn't heard of before, Chichibu. I don't know if that was a nickname or if that's really a Japanese name.
Too cute to be real.
Chichibu. Sounds like what you'd name your little Yorkshire Terrier. Sorry. I don't want to offend Japanese if there's like some very respectable Chichibus out there right now. And other royal princes to head up them and manage the project. They dug hundreds of vaults across the Philippines containing what has been estimated to be trillions of dollars worth of loot. Like enough to upset the world's economy.
Wow.
This book I was reading, their estimates of how much gold was out there, I did the math based on what a metric ton of gold is worth today. And some of these caches contained $55 to $200 trillion worth of gold. Now, the GDP of the United States in 2023 was about $27 trillion. So think about that. What that would do to the world's economy if that gold was found by one person.
Mm-hmm. The new ruler of the world?
Right, exactly. These treasure locations were indicated on 175 encrypted maps and entrusted to the personal valet of one of the princes, a humble Filipino farmer. This farmer was made to promise that he would keep the maps secret and hidden for 30 years. This treasure was also referred to as Yamashita's gold, named after Japanese general Tomoyuki Yamashita.
You chose this story just so you could speak Japanese.
A brutal and heartless man. In June of 1945, with U.S. tanks bearing down on them, General Yamashita held a party for 175 Japanese engineers, all of whom had helped to build the 175 tunnels that held the treasure. The farewell party was held in one of the underground complexes that the engineers had built. The sake flowed, as did patriotic pride, and at midnight, with the engineers drunk and singing, Yamashita and two royal princes snuck out of the tunnel and detonated dynamite at the mouth of the complex, burying the engineers alive.
Whoa.
This wasn't unusual. The miles of complex tunnels and underground vaults were built mostly with slave labor provided by prisoners of war. These enslaved men would work wearing nothing but loincloths or completely nude, subsisting on a diet of thin rice gruel. When one man would collapse, there were plenty to take his place. Once the tunnels were dug and the treasure placed inside, the workers would be buried alive inside. The tunnel would be booby-trapped and seeded with poison and bombs, sealed, and then blessed by a Shinto priest.
Wow. So once you ceased to be valuable, you were
ceased
to be.
It was also, they didn't want anybody who knew where it was or anything about it to be alive. After the Japanese surrendered to Allied forces in 1945, many of those who knew of the existence of the gold had either been killed during the war or tried for war crimes and either executed or incarcerated. General Yamashita was executed for war crimes in 1946, but the gold was still out there. Edward Lansdale, an Air Force major who worked in military intelligence and was an early practitioner of psychological warfare, discovered several of the Golden Lily vaults, and with other U.S. military intelligence personnel and General Douglas MacArthur, set up a secret trust called the M Fund, where the recovered treasure could be placed. They seized billions of dollars worth of treasure from around 170 vaults, and the money was laundered into 176 bank accounts in 42 countries. I just noticed there's a lot of 170-something numbers in this story, isn't there? This was called the Black Eagle Trust, and it was named after the looted Nazi gold that would have black eagles stamped onto it.
Oh, got it.
And it was overseen by U.S. War Secretary Henry Stimson. This fund was used by the U.S. to finance anti-communist activities around the world, for bribes to overthrow governments and carry out assassinations, buy politicians, and generally, in short, impose America's will.
Wow.
It helped to fund the new government in Japan and was a big part of CIA operations.
Wow. I had no idea. This is a crazy story, Shay.
It's a bonkers story. It's bonkers.
Bonkers.
Oh, by the way, Edward Lansdale was the CIA operative who spread rumors in the Philippines that people were being killed in the jungle by vampires.
Oh, vampires.
And even orchestrated fake vampire attacks on enemy patrols that included snatching the last man in the patrol, puncturing his neck vampire style with 2 holes, draining the man of his blood, and then dumping his corpse back on the trail. What a great guy.
Oh my.
That actually
gosh.
happened.
Wow.
That was definitely a true story.
Wow.
So this is all according to the book Gold Warriors, America's Secret Recovery of Yamashita's Gold by Sterling and Peggy Seagrave. And according to them, this was all orchestrated by President Harry Truman, and every subsequent president kept the secret operation going, including Bill Clinton and even George Bush Jr. But of course, the U.S. had to keep this secret. The Seagraves claim that the U.S. helped to cover up much of the war crimes committed by the Japanese and conspired to make sure that Japan was mostly not held accountable. They couldn't have it get out that they were running clandestine operations funded with stolen blood money. The CIA joined the hunt for undiscovered loot as well, and this is where we bring in the next key player of our story. Ferdinand Marcos, president of the Philippines. Marcos was obsessed with finding the treasure, and the CIA was happy to help.
She needed more shoes.
Right? He used CIA aircraft, U.S. Air Force planes, and U.S. naval ships to move the treasure he found. He was helped out by the CIA's global network of banks to help hide the money in offshore accounts. Marcos would enlist the aid of treasure hunters throughout the world, often promising them riches and then either simply jailing them, ripping them off and paying them nothing, or beaten, tortured, or outright killed. He was a really great guy.
Sounds like somebody you want to hang out with.
Oh, he also employed psychics to help him locate treasure.
Oh, good grief. Well, I mean, use all avenues.
Exactly.
Leave nothing unturned.
In this way, Marcos supposedly recovered billions in gold and treasure, but he had a problem. He needed a way to launder the gold so that it could be sold. There are certain standards in the world gold market that must be maintained. Gold bars must be stamped, usually with a serial number, often with a mark indicating weight and purity. It must have a certificate that indicates the supply chain and origin of the gold. It will be tested for purity often as well. Gold also has certain impurities that act as a fingerprint, which can help prove its origin. As all of the treasure was stolen, it could not be simply sold to the large gold banks of the world. So he enlisted the help of the Americans again. First, he hired Olaf Johnson, a Chicago-based psychic who had become famous after collaborating with astronaut Edgar Mitchell on a space telepathy experiment. True story. Without NASA's knowledge, Mitchell would try to telepathically transmit images of playing cards to Olaf while en route to the moon.
Oh. Any success? No?
He actually was like weirdly successful, but, but not like he did better than average.
Right. Better than luck.
Right. He was put in contact with Nevadan metallurgist and smelter owner Robert Curtis. At first, Curtis was reluctant, but after being offered $5 billion, he changed his mind, like you would. Curtis flew to the Philippines and soon brought hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of smelting equipment to start processing the gold. He had apparently discovered a method to alter gold's chemical fingerprint so that along with forged documents, it could be sold in the world's gold market. But Marcos, being a cheap bastard, made Curtis pay upfront for all of the costs associated with setting up the operation in the Philippines. So Curtis needed a loan. Guess who was happy to pony up money to help out the CIA in their anti-communist efforts?
Mr. Yakima Bread Tab Man.
That's right, the John Birch Society. With the help of Floyd Paxton and the JBS, Curtis managed to get a loan from JBS of $375,000 to fund his treasure hunting exploits. According to the Seagraves book, Floyd and his son Jerry were the money men who set up the loan for Curtis. This was all to be done through a shell called the Leber Company, and that's rebel spelled backwards.
Oh.
Just to be cute.
Yeah.
Kwik Lok opened an offshore company in the Bahamas called Commonwealth Packaging Limited. Once recovered, Marcos's gold would be sold in the Bahamas and the money would be transferred to the Royal Bank of Canada in Nassau. Then it would be trickled into Canada through Kwik Lok's British Columbia plant. Then Paxton would withdraw the money in Canada and transfer it into an account held by the Canadian branch of Kwik Lok. I know it's very convoluted. Then Paxton would smuggle the money across the border into the U.S.
Wow.
But before any of this could go down, Paxton dies of a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
Curtis was, of course, betrayed by Marcos, and then John Birch Society sued him for repayment of the loan. Curtis lost everything and ended up as a manager of a Chevy dealership in Nevada.
Oh.
Marcos
He was so close.
I know, he was so close
So
to
close.
billions of dollars. Marcos was eventually overthrown and then exiled to Hawaii. But the new Filipino government didn't abandon the hunt. They brought Robert Curtis back in and started digging around under important national sites, which off the people.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were eventually forced back out of the country.
Wow.
It would be like if you took backhoes and started digging under the Alamo or something.
Oh, yeah.
People would be like,
Excuse me.
excuse me. After Marcos was deposed, a treasure hunting locksmith emerged with an outstanding tale. Ragielo Roja claimed that he broke into an underground tunnel system after 7 months of digging. Inside, they discovered a skeleton in a Japanese army uniform, a hidden vault stacked high with boxes of gold bars, and a solid gold Buddha statue that had a screw-on head that was packed full of diamonds.
So he wasn't really a Buddha. It's not what he was there for.
Right. The Buddha weighed over 1 ton, and it took 10 men to move it to the safest place he could think of, the back closet of his house.
Okay, it's better than a bathroom.
President Marcos's goons soon showed up, stole the Buddha, the gold, and even his kid's piggy bank.
Good grief.
When Rojas complained to the local magistrate, he was shown a brass statue that was not his gold Buddha. He was allegedly then beaten, tortured, and thrown in prison. It wasn't until after Marcos was removed from power in 1986 that he came forward with this story. He sold his claim to the treasure to an Atlanta businessman who set up the Golden Buddha Corporation, and then sued Ferdinand Marcos and his wife Imelda for wrongful imprisonment and the theft of Yamashita's gold. As the Marcos family still held billions stashed in Swiss bank accounts and other assets, they figured it was worth a try. Amazingly, swarms of treasure hunters, including Olaf Johnson and Robert Curtis, came forth to testify that Marcos had stolen the treasure. In 1996, the Hawaiian courts awarded the Rojas estate $22 billion in compensation, which is described as the world's largest verdict.
Wow.
Ever.
It has to be. That's huge.
But since the Marcos billions were hidden in overseas bank accounts, it was never collected on.
Mm-hmm.
The gold bug struck countless treasure hunters over the decades. One Northern Irish dentist named Colin Howell was tricked by Filipino crooks into investing $500,000 in a search for the gold. It later turns out that in order to come up with the money, he murdered his wife for the life insurance policy.
Oh, good grief. This greed in this story is insane.
The allure of Yamashita's gold has even affected people that you and I know. Steve Edmondson, a filmmaker and friend of our show, got involved in the late 1980s.
Shut up.
His law firm had a casual investors club where young lawyers would contribute $20 a month for fun, high-risk investments. One of these investments supported, right?
That's this one.
Just wild and crazy things, right? One of these investments supported a treasure hunter who claimed to have a map to Yamashita's treasure. This happened when many treasure hunters were exploring the Philippines after Marcos left power, because under Marcos, all found treasure would belong to the government, so you couldn't keep any of it. So while Steve's group never made any money from this venture, he did use the experience as inspiration for part of a screenplay.
Oh.
So this is a crazy story, right?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I'm going to ruin it for you.
Oh, because it's not real?
Most of the story about looted wartime gold buried by the Japanese is probably completely untrue. Turns out that no matter what legend says, not one speck of gold has ever been found, or any other corroborating evidence for that matter.
Any evidence that it ever existed?
Yeah, nothing that can verify this story. There is no evidence of Operation Golden Lily, the Black Eagle Trust Fund, or tunnels filled with gold. I wonder how many people stopped before they got to this point.
Stopped at what?
In our episode.
Oh.
and are just like taking that to the bank.
They're now looking into their 401k to see if it's worth pulling it out.
They're booking flights to the Philippines and buying a shovel.
That'll teach them for ditching out early. You need to hear the end of the story.
Listen to the end. Most of the more nefarious details of the story, like the United States involvement, Marcos' use of CIA assets, etc., comes from the book Gold Warriors, America's Secret Recovery of Yamashita's Gold. The book begins with a foreword that alleges that the authors had to go into hiding for months after the publication of the book because kill squads were being sent out after them. So I listened to 75% of this book before my audiobook hours on Spotify ran out. But at that point, I was like, this can't be true. I was in it at first. I was like, wow, how come I've never heard about this?
Right. That's what I've been thinking the whole time.
So the authors...
I wasn't homeschooled, although I didn't really pay attention in school. So
you might as well have been.
Yeah.
The authors, Sterling and Peggy Seagrave, may have been taking some serious liberties with history. Although born in America, Sterling grew up in China and was indoctrinated with anti-Japanese sentiment for most of his childhood. Now, this is definitely reflected in the book. While I was listening, I was like, man, these writers hate the Japanese, hate and despise them. And I was like, I know they did a lot of atrocities, but this is like venomous hate that he's pouring through. He paints a picture of the Japanese being heartless, brutal, and scheming even to this day. And through his journalism career, he fell into multiple conspiracy theories and helped to spread them. He and his wife Peggy were both prominent figures in JFK assassination theories. Both of their books around the Japanese war gold story are full of suspicions of all things Western and Japanese and portray the Japanese and CIA as wicked villains.
Wow.
Later in his life, he took to the internet, like you do, spreading stories that the CIA was snuffing people out with exotic spy weapons. Even one of his colleagues who shared their distrust of Japan said the following: "The Seagraves are not fully reliable as historians. They have a tendency to overreach, exaggerating the roles of Japanese gangsters and ex-military American bit players when the bankers, politicians, and CIA operatives are scary enough. They know the Philippines well, but are unreliable on Japan and do not read Japanese. The book is full of errors that could be easily corrected by a second-year student of the language."
Burn, burn, big idiots.
Another author, Donald Gillen, wrote an entire book debunking the Seagraves' claims called Falsifying China's History. In it, he wrote, "The book is so biased, so unreliable, so riddled with errors, and so utterly lacking in historical perspective that much of it could be classified as fiction rather than as a work of history." So, yeah.
So a book of lies.
Right. So most reliable historians agree that the legend of Yamashita's gold is just that, a legend. While the Japanese did seize valuables, they needed the money to pay for the war effort. So why would they bury it in the Philippines, where it was likely that it would soon fall into American hands? No gold has ever been found verifying the legend of Golden Lily. And there is no evidence that the Black Eagle Trust Fund ever existed. Not to say that the CIA doesn't have secret accounts to pay for clandestine
Sure.
but it's just probably not funded with buried treasure like Indiana Jones style. Proof of Kwik Lok's connection to Marcos hasn't been found.
Oh, okay.
The threads of history often weave unexpected tapestries. In this case, they intertwine the humble bread tab born in Yakima's orchards with the grand illusions of buried wartime plunder and the insidious spread of far-right ideology. In the end, this story serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder that the pursuit of imaginary fortunes, whether in gold or ideology, can lead us far from the simple truth. Perhaps the real value lies not in buried treasure, but in an understanding the complex forces that shape our world, one bread tab at a time.
Dun, dun, dun. Wow, that was quite a story.
It was a ride, right?
I still need to like process it. There's so many things like there's the right wing stuff, the conspiracies, the just sheer greed that no human life mattered. It was just the gold, the complexity of the human beings in it, the different countries, the timeline. It's a lot.
So the John Birch Society is true. That was all true. That was all from my research of their history and what other people have said about them, like actual important.
So that part,
that's true. The legend of the Yamashita's gold is a legend. Now, a lot of the wilder claims that were in this story were taken directly from that book. And at this point, I think that book has been completely debunked as fiction. Now, Yamashita's gold is a legend out there, and it has not stopped thousands of treasure hunters from heading out to the Philippines and digging. And people still do it today. But most of the experts agree that there's no wartime gold. If there was, it has already been looted by Marcos. It's possible that Marcos, I mean, he was president of the Philippines. He could do whatever he wanted.
And he did multiple times.
Yeah. And he did believe in the gold. And there is evidence that he was pursuing that. So, but if it's been found, he looted it and already spent it. Or if the CIA or the American government somehow got their hands on it, it's already spent. In that book, too, they were claiming amounts of gold that, when I looked into it, far surpassed what experts believe is the amount of gold that actually has ever been mined ever in the history of the world.
Okay, got it.
So
that right there is.
Right. I mean, he was just throwing out these numbers that were like, if this was out there, and also the numbers that he was throwing out of what he thought that Marcos had gotten a hold of were in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. Like, come on. If he had his hands on that money, he would not have been exiled to Hawaii.
That's what I was going to say.
He would have overthrown the government and come back into power.
Right. He would have overthrown a few governments.
I mean, with that type of money, you could pay for whatever you wanted for, right?
Right. Well, as you can hear just in this story, and probably know throughout life, money changes how people operate.
Absolutely.
And at that level and that amount of money, he could change how other people operate.
Exactly. Well, and then also in this book, they claim that the United States was hand in hand with Japan in recovering some of the gold and hiding their war crimes, and that Japan really wasn't broke at the end of the war, and that America helped to set up that facade that they were broke. And there's just no proof of that. They were broke. There's no evidence that Japan has billions upon trillions of dollars worth of gold sitting somewhere.
Have they
that they're using.
Checked Imelda's closet? Have they really scanned her shoes to make sure they're not gold?
Her shoes were left.
Yeah.
And then I think that most of them were destroyed.
Yeah.
I'm going to be doing, speaking of our Patreon, I am going to be doing a bonus episode on Imelda Marcos and her shoes and she was a monster too.
Oh, yes.
And
I remember.
And her mother.
Right. What year were they exiled?
What did I say? 86.
Yeah, I was going to say I was in high school when this all went down.
Yeah, I think most people of our age, most Gen Xers, will remember just Imelda Marcos' shoes if they don't remember Ferdinand Marcos as being a terrible dictator like me.
Well, the first thought is the shoes, and then I remember the other part.
Right, the terrible dictator part.
Yeah.
So the John Birch Society obviously has shaped the crazy alt-right that we see
I'm
today.
interested in looking into that. That is stunning because I'd never heard of it, I don't think. And the fact that it's still here today makes a whole lot of sense because the narrative, the rhetoric is very similar, if not the same.
No new ideas.
No new ideas. That is shocking to me.
So anyways, that's the link between bread tabs and gold and John right-wing conservatism.
Well, my mind is blown.
So next time you guys pull a bread tab off of a loaf of bread.
Yeah, I'll never do it the same again.
You're going to look at that little innocent looking thing with a newfound appreciation.
Thank you for that story. It was great.
All right, guys. Well, please go to rainydayrabbitholes.com to find more episodes. You can find links to all of our social media sites. Please reach out. You can find us on Threads, Facebook. And again, you might have noticed that we now have ads in our episodes. That's because we just joined the Spreaker Prime network, which we're very excited about. I know the ads can be annoying, but they help to pay our ongoing costs, which a lot of people don't realize that podcasting costs money.
Yep.
But again, if you don't want to hear those ads, go to Patreon and sign up for not only ad-free episodes, but for bonus content.
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. We will see you next time and
See you down the rabbit hole.